Welcome to London A to Z, where we show you the hidden parts of London. London is known for its public parks and gardens like Hyde Park, Regent's Park and Kensington Gardens. Less familiar are the private garden squares. This time we see an extraordinary example of the private garden square, the Water Gardens complex near Marble Arch. This garden was featured in the James Bond film Quantum of Solace, and we meet its renowned designer, conceptual artist Tony Heywood. So Tony, tell us where we are.
Well, we're under the mezzanine level in the Water Gardens, which was a sort of concrete modernist block that was built in the late 60s. And I was given the responsibility of replanting and soft landscaping the entire complex, which I was doing over a period of 3 phases. So we've drained all these ponds here, which were probably about 6-8 inches full of sludge, debris, and 60s memorabilia. Problem is, with an area like this, is trying to find a landscape or a plant that will actually stand up to such strong rectilinear edifices. So most of the planting here, as you can see, is architectural, evergreen, muscular, structural. You can go as far as say graphic planting, quite strong and quite bold. So the idea was, once this was established, the church commissioners then gave me the opportunity to be a little bit more creative. So when we go upstairs, above where we stood here now, we can see 2 examples of the swimmer and the water drop, which were gardens principally driven from my imagination from Japanese dry gravel landscape, Zen gardens. But more importantly, I think, it was a landscape that is essentially viewed by the residents here, who I was building a landscape for, to be viewed from a vertical perspective.
One thing I'm interested to know about this garden, which is so modern in so many ways, is how it fits into the long tradition of English garden design. And obviously you have great experience with more traditional garden design through the other garden squares, London garden squares that you've worked on.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about that?
Well, in any garden design, there's this huge overlap between you're essentially responding to a space. In the traditional London squares, which is, there's a huge constraint to a degree because you're working with history and you are essentially dealing with a preserved or a conserved form. Whereas here, there was almost a clear space in which I could develop my own architectural and graphic plantsman-like language.
Tell us about the Pocket Park.
The Pocket Park, now that's a very unusual space. That's on the very corner of the complex, but it was a sort of an area where you could sort of how would you say it? A heavenly garden in a hellish space. It was a difficult corner to be able to come up with an idea of how to landscape it. Initial suggestions of sort of a garden of respite, which is what most people want in an urban setting, somewhere that's to take you away from all of the sort of hustle and bustle of urban life. But I thought, no, let's go for a garden that fully embraces that, is sort of more in harmony with the space it's in, centred around a curve of stainless steel which is capturing the light and mirroring not only passers-by but cars, and in the evening you can see the lights moving around, and it's a sort of vortex of which the rest of the garden is almost being pulled into.
Now, if someone is faced with a blank canvas as a garden, what do they need to do in order to come up with a garden design? How do you actually do that yourself?
My initial reaction is to analyse the space itself, talk to the client, whether that's on a small domestic scale or a corporate client, and what the actual space is going to be used for, its primary function. And then on top of that, you're layering the graphics and the language of plants and the language of landscape, how that fits in with the architecture of the actual space itself, and the constraints that you may well have. In London, though, we do have this unique ability to be able to reference and draw from a wider palette, just because in the last 10 years the temperature gradient has been substantially higher, and things that would not normally have been through and be able to go through a winter period I've experimented with, including cactus, succulents, South African silverleaf trees, agaves, olives are frequently planted. So softer, tender species are now being utilised in situations that you wouldn't have been able to dream of doing before.
Yes.
Whereby you're just looking out onto enclosures and you don't ever go into them.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to create what essentially is a walk past garden rather than a walk through. Almost like micro landscapes, which you just see from outside but don't really enter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. See you next time on London A to Z.